Few beings can contend with the children of the multiverse. What are even angels or demons, mere spawn of mortal virtues and vices, to do in the face of a titan's godlike fury? Dragons, as old as mountains and wise as the wind, are revealed as mewling babes when matched to a titan's timeless intellect. Immortal, brimming with untold power, and as predictable as a storm-tossed sea, the titans are feared even by deities and are understood by few. Theirs is a tale of divine battle, deific vengeance, and eternal exile. Cast out of paradise to brood, rule, and destroy, they walk the world. Only fools do not bow before them or flee at their approach. This would be the part of the video where I would go into the monster manual and basically show you what's in there for titans, but titans are actually not in the monster manual. Somehow they just didn't make it. So we're basically going to go just right into the video. Let's talk about what 5th edition did not tell you about titans. So before we get started, for those of you who do not know, the Ordning is essentially a set of rules that all giants must follow. A divine mandate created by Anim the All-Father that is unavoidable by giant kind. It speaks of many things, but the most important factor of the Ordning is that it clearly denotes which giant kind is superior to the others. This divinely expressed hierarchy states that on the lower end, you have the Hill Giants, and then the Stone Giants, then both the Fire and Frost Giants, then the Cloud Giants, and lastly at the very top, you have the Storm Giants, who basically rule over the others. Now, that would be it as far as the 5th edition would tell you, but what they did not tell you is that the Titans are also part of this hierarchy, and they are right above the Storm Giants. The Titans are supposed to be giants. But now, what really is a Titan? A Titan is, to put it simply, a 25-foot tall man or woman of godlike power. I mean, that literally describes it to perfection. It's actually funny because on the actual lore that we have on these creatures, they are described as basically behaving just like humans, except that they are enormous and have godlike abilities. And obviously they're a little bit deeper than that, but to any outsider, they could be easily described as just overly emotional, gigantic humans. I will have some art here and there where I show illustrations of titans that look like maybe fire humanoids or maybe even monstrous humanoids, but that's just because it's hard to find illustration portraying exactly what I need, but just know that they literally just look like enormous humans. Quote, "Titans are livers of life, creators of fate. These benevolent giants are closer to the wellspring of life than mere mortals and as such, revel in their gigantic existences. Titans are wild and chaotic. They are prone to more pronounced emotions than humans and can experience godlike fits of rage. They are, however, basically good and benevolent, so they tend to not take life. They are very powerful creatures and will fight with ferocity when necessary. They are fiery and passionate, displaying emotions with greater purity and less reservation than mortal beings. Titans are quick to anger, but quicker still to forgive. In fits of rage, they destroy mountains, and in moments of passion, will create empires. They are in all ways godlike, and in all ways larger than life. Sometimes their godlike passions and godlike rages make them seem like deities. However, it is common for whole civilizations to mistake them for deities. Titans primarily dwell in great palaces and mansions in Olympus, where they live their lives whimsically. There they will dance, sing, study, debate, and engage in all other manner of activities with titanic proportion. If Titans find something that interests them, it would not be unusual for him to study it in great detail for many weeks, only to leave it when his interest has waned. They may also engage in debates and arguments that last literally for weeks at a time. These debates might end in a jovial laughter and good spirits, or in thunder and rage. Such are the whims of Titans." End quote. They dress in Greek attire, and their culture resembles that of the ancient Greek pantheons and cultures. It is actually unsure whether humans have adopted Titanic culture, or whether the Titans, in their whimsical nature, have adopted human culture instead. They are generally so powerful that no creature could ever contest their might, and so they never wear armor or any form of extra protection. They just wear their togas and beautiful and exquisitely rare gems and treasures to adorn their beauty. We frankly don't have as much lore about them, and what we do have is basically kind of straightforward. Whatever your idea of Olympus and Greek gods are, that's basically what you get here with Titans. But the real question is, and I suppose probably the reason why you guys clicked on this video is, I guess to know about their power. Are they truly the strongest race in Dungeons & Dragons? Well, yeah, they were created basically to be that. Whatever the pinnacle of might, agility, mental acuity, and will is, they are it. The gods basically never made creations this strong later because they realized how dangerous it was to create things that could rival them in power. Their form is described as being a literal mirror to glory. The lore states that their muscles are denser than adamantine and more pliable than the supplest bamboo, that they see in the dark as well as any fiend, and in light, a hawk is nearly blind by comparison. When pleased, their voices are like honey poured over a golden lute's strings, and when enraged, their bellows shatter mountains and shout down any tempest thunder. Their body is so perfectly built that they are physically stronger than anything twice their size. In fact, they always beat gargantuan dragons in contest of physical mastery. All Titans can cast spells as level 20 wizards or clerics, and they have an average intelligence of supragenius, which basically means they always have at least 20 intellect, with many of them having even more, which would basically be considered godlike intellect. They all have maximum psionic abilities and are invulnerable to psionic attacks themselves. If you're interested in the Forgotten Realms, I would highly recommend watching this video of mine where I talk about their creation in Toril. Their history in the Forgotten Realms is very small because they basically just constructed the capital of Astoria, which is the capital of the Giants, over 30,000 years ago, and then were forced to leave after the Great Wars between the Giants and the Dragons. But there is a lot more if you want to take in the whole of Dungeons & Dragons in consideration, because the Titans do have a wild history in the whole of the D&D multiverse. See, the gods wanted to create perfection, and they basically did in creating the Titans. They loved the Titans more than any other thing that they had made because they were perfect, and they gave them everything that they wanted. In time, gods would war against one another, and as one would have it, they would use their own Titan creations to lead their armies against one another. This is when they discovered that the Titans that they had created could actually kill gods. They had made them too powerful, and when Titans realized this, their demands became harsher and harsher. Eventually, the Titans started to reproduce, something that was a big no-no for the gods, since the gods were the only ones that were allowed to create. See, this is way before there were humans or elves or fae or anything like that. Creation was basically just starting. And see, the problem was that the spawn of the Titans, they were basically almost as strong as the original Titans. The gods had done fucked up. The gods decided to completely ban the Titans from reproducing and to exile their creations to different planes. But see, the Titans had reproduced in hopes of having their children rule different planets, but instead, the gods then started making creations that would then live alongside the Titans in those planets as equals, and this angered the Titans enough that they started a war against the gods. The war is described as having lasted an entire age, where thousands of Titans and hundreds of gods perished, but with the gods having won in the end. The Titans that were still alive were exiled into the farthest reaches of the cosmos, and the most dangerous of Titans would then be incarcerated in Carceri for all time. The Titans that sided with the gods in the war would be granted amnesty and allowed to live in the heavens, of course. Now, this goes to show they truly must be really powerful to be able to physically challenge the gods, and they are. But to talk about their power, I must warn that they are actually two types of Titans. The normal kind, and then what the lore calls Advanced Titans or Greater Titans. Normal Titans are presumably the children of the original Greater Titans, with a challenge rating of about 21, which is equal to just about the ancient Red Dragon in power. The Greater Titans, however, don't really have a challenge rating because once you start entering into godlike territory, numbers just kind of get out of whack. I mean, realistically speaking, if you have a monster that has an at-will ability to kill any non-deity without a check, How can you give that monster a challenge rating, right? Gods have no challenge rating because you simply can't realistically fight them. Presumably they could just kill you by just staring at you. Now this comes here from 2nd edition, quote, "It is very difficult to provide combat statistics for greater titans. Like the gods themselves, greater titans are simply not subject to aggression from non-divine beings. They are never harmed by such attacks," end quote. Basically, mortal weapons cannot harm a god, not even magical weapons. This is something that we talked about in our videos on deities before. The big however though is that for some reason we actually did get a stat sheet and a challenge rating for not just any particular greater titan, but for the strongest of all of them. See, during the war between the titans and the gods, the one that led the titans was named Cronus, the strongest of them all. The lore says that he alone killed over 100 gods in single combat. In fact, he was so strong that dozens of gods had to band together in order to just restrain him. Not even all of them together could kill him. And the gods basically developed a trap where he would be suspended in a massive illusion. In the illusion, Cronus would think that he was still fighting his war against the gods, but in reality he was just under a spell, imprisoned in Carceri. Now, fun fact though, the trap was actually designed by Kortelmak, the god of kobolds, whom we talked about in our last video. Now, Cronus, however, is so strong that in the illusion, he has actually defeated almost every single god by himself in phantom combat, something that gods never thought possible. They figured after the eons, or after losing against all of them together, that he would just tire of the war, but no. He has continued fighting and almost defeated every single one of them. The gods fear that if he actually kills everyone in the illusion, that the illusion will shatter and he will escape and become further enraged, realizing that it was all magic, and then, well, all the gods will probably die by his hand. Cronus has a challenge rating of 56, and based on the previous story, this leads us to believe that gods probably have a challenge rating of about 50 or so, since Cronus seems to have the capabilities of defeating any one god in single combat. The stats here are based on 3rd edition, but I'll pass it through here so that you guys can stop the video and see it if you want. Now, there is no way to know what stats an average Greater Titan has, but one can presume that they might have been somewhere in the 40s. Basically higher than anything else except the gods, with Cronus probably being some kind of great fluke being so high. If you guys are interested in the comparisons between the strongest monsters in Dungeons & Dragons, then I really highly recommend these series of videos that I made where I literally just went through every single monster that has a higher CR than 30 and then broke them all down in terms of power. It was really a good video, I would recommend it. But there you have it, folks. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Titans because I didn't get to do that much before, especially in any of those videos that I just talked about. There isn't much to them in the lore, unfortunately, but I hope that this was entertaining to you guys nonetheless. Nowadays, the Titans that you would see if you were to go to Olympus, for example, would be presumably the ones that sided with the gods in this particular stellar conflict, which basically boils down to the more benevolent Titans. The Titans that you find exiled on the outskirts of the multiverse would then be the evil ones, and of course, the ones trapped and imprisoned in Carceri would be the ones dangerous enough to maybe even bring down a god or two. Now, how all of this connects to the Forgotten Realms lore is hard to tell. It's not impossible that Anam the All-Father is himself a greater titan, being one of the many who reproduced without the gods' consent, or maybe he was just one of the gods, one who continued to produce titans, but then much less powerful versions of them. I would like to personally thank my Patreon supporters, Zach Bowell, Rukato Fan, Barry Maskant, 5E Magic Shop, Daniel Umar, Morgan Johnson, Rusty Rain, Biotechnofrag, Daniel Luna, Dog Feeder, Brad Salazar, Terry Culp, The Great Codini, Walker Modley, Omega Scales, Ziran King, Ozol, Ariel Nelson, Alex Cookson, Griffin Pierce, Folky951, Benjamin Bosters, Mr. Salty, Thomas Hunt, Drayden, Tesla Coil, The Role Playing Junkies Podcast, Prince Daylight Morning Crown, Sabine Kurshap, Solarensis, Ordoric, William Sladden, Nathan McCumb, Bushido Burrito, AG Dare, Soulless Rider, Roleplay with Advantage, Stalia, Items to Astound on DM's Guild, Samuel King, Lost Crusader, Jacob Ortiz, Tython, Sean Duthat, Treb909, Garrett Minnick, and Benjamin Colborn for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. If you would like to support me as well, then please head on over to patreon.com/MrRhex to support. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you just for being awesome and for liking and commenting on the video, of course. And yeah, there's really not much to say today, so I will just go ahead and see you all next time. Bye-bye.